When it comes to novel ways and new models to look at and understand the air system as a whole, where we have a different model, that's where we propose there is a gap in the ability for the MOD to invest prosperity funding into opportunities. With MOD providing that kind of support, and we saw it a little bit with the Rapid Capabilities Office, it attracted huge leverage effect on third-party market funding, sovereign wealth funding into our programme. So it was a massive multiplier on UK taxpayer money, and we believe the MOD should be leveraging that a lot more. And I think multipliers of 10, 20 times that amount of money to give you a new way of understanding an air system, that's a massive opportunity now for the UK. The General Secretary of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, was recently quoted as saying, "We have a kind of joint responsibility as governments, as industry, to look into how we can increase supply without unacceptable high increases in prices and costs. We need to move away from replacing a frigate with a frigate, a tank with a tank, an aircraft with an aircraft." And that is exactly why we started this company. Technology is fantastic, defence industrial capability is fantastic, but it's missing really, really strong commercial principles. If you look at the commercial aircraft sector, you will all probably travel on an aircraft system called the A320 that has multiple variants, that is sold massively across the market, solving many different requirements, and we all go to Malaga for 60 quid. And those aeroplanes typically leave on time. When you look at the rotary wing on the helicopter part of the military flying training system, that part of that system is already using a family of helicopters. And we estimate it's only taking a third of the manpower per aircraft to guarantee very high levels of availability of that fleet day in, day out. I think it's aggregate the need. Don't just look at AJT, look at neighbouring needs as well. When you've got an aggregated need, just take existing technology. It's already very, very good, and modularise it. So your technology risk is low and you're using it much more broadly across a bigger need. Thirdly, let industry run the aircraft fleet that is featuring that aggregated existing technology, modular technology, and the industry will be able to achieve a much lower cost per flying hour that will free up availability and funding to pay for instructors and international defence training. Fourthly, private investment. That is absolutely doable. There is a very near-term market in the next 5 years around the world for this kind of aircraft. But it needs a little bit of government catalysing support to that point I made earlier, around a little bit of investment in prosperity funding that leverages that private money. And fifthly, sovereignty. The National Value Framework is pivotal for balancing prosperity, capability, international influence and budget. If we keep that here, we've got the regions around the UK can all be a part of the programme. If it's a modular programme, very easy for them to participate. You've got soft power for supporting the export process, which we lack today. STEM, obviously massively important. How do you train young people in whole aircraft if you haven't got a programme? And lastly, the capability. Keeping it here in the UK is obviously, I don't need to say, highly critical. We've got an air system approach that is basically using existing technology, but that can be adapted flexibly through modularity to do similar jobs across the market. You basically increase your market by 5. We're seeing a £90 billion market around the world that can mop up not only advanced jet training, but similar roles in surrogacy, red air, operational support, be it ISR, tactical tanking. All of these roles operate in a very similar performance space, subsonic performance space, with a similar size of platform. What we need is to just use existing technology with the right modular approach and digital, and you can create an air system platform very affordably across global regions, and that's a huge scale of opportunity. Because there has to be another way of procuring aircraft. Now, there are very capable light jet aircraft on the market today, and they are very have sparkling performance, but they still perpetuate the traditional model, whilst defence budgets are increasingly constrained, and we have to prepare for sixth generation. The platforms that are on the market today have never been designed with sixth generation in mind. So there is a gap, a very clear gap. As I mentioned, Secretary General NATO there is asking industries to start thinking differently. And that's going to be thinking about the problem holistically. Certainly, from our conversations with our colleagues in Europe, the US, Japan, the mindset is shifting. The concept of a light jet air system that is modular, and that means not only will it generate a crewed light jet aircraft, it will also generate an uncrewed variant as well, all using the same architecture. Means that your customer now has the option to tune that training system depending on what its combat air system is going to look like in the future. It's a very complex space, and if your training system isn't adaptable to flex with where the customer needs to go, you've got a problem.
So your client,
given that a lot of these assets are not delivering lethal effect, you could start to bring commercial models into this, whereby if you hand the management of that flexible air system fleet over to a commercial provider, industry, that provider will then allow the customer to pull on whatever access they want to either an uncrewed aircraft, to get to deliver the capability that they want without the customer carrying the capital risk. And if the industry provider then has the luxury of the scale of this fleet, which is doing crewed, uncrewed, ISR, AJT, tactical support, aggressor, red air, the scale is without compare with what we have today.
Right, so you have a leasing type model where you would go in and provide a solution for a particular period of time for a particular client.
Yeah, it's if you imagine the affinity construct today in flying training, but with a common aircraft system and times it by 5. Then suddenly the economies of scale you have in spare parts, in your logistics system, to really rationalise that whole fleet. And what the customer should see is a 60% cost down on what they're having to pay to get access to that asset.
But also they're not putting up enormous wadges of capital up
and they're
front.
not carrying the risk.
Oh, okay.
So there has been enormous support from DSE, no question. But the big question always comes back to, is the UK going to buy it? And that's obviously where we need to move this conversation on. And I'm looking forward to working with all the stakeholders in the industry to make that happen.